This is last year's top of the line iPhone, the iPhone 14 Pro Max. But now it's not officially available, but you can still pick a used or a refurbished one for a deal. And to do that, there will always be this question, which is it worth doing that? And this video is all about it. So the iPhone 14 Pro Max is even now a great phone. In fact, it still can go ahead with the flagship phones launched recently, and this phone, it does hold its mark perfectly. It's because it has a premium design, excellent build quality, great display, powerful performance, and solid cameras. Now one thing I can say straight away is that if you're confused between the 14 Pro Max and the 15 Pro Max, and the savings is just maybe $100 to $200, I would 100% suggest to get the 15 Pro Max because it's an overall refined version of the 14 Pro Max. But then if the savings is much more, then the 14 Pro Max makes much more sense in most of the areas. Now as I said earlier, this phone is great in majority of the things that matter to users, but then after using it as my main phone for over a year, a thing that was concerning to me was the rate at which the battery health was dropping. It was really worse than any Pro Max series iPhones I have used. Now the battery backup was actually good because I could easily get through a day with around 8 plus hours of screen on time, but then since the battery health was dropping fast, it was like the battery backup would be worst pretty soon and a battery swap might be needed much earlier than usual. And that's something to keep an eye on when you get a refurbished iPhone 14 Pro Max. And other than that, there is really nothing much to worry about if you get the 14 Pro Max. Because here, even though it's a brick-like heavy phone, the build quality is just premium. And right now, I feel that the stainless steel, even though it's sharp, has a much more premium in-hand feel than titanium. Now from a comfort point of view, the curved titanium edge in the 15 Pro series is better, but for the premium feel, the 14 Pro Max stands a step above. But the weight factor is something to note with the 14 Pro series, especially with the 14 Pro Max, because this is a heavy phone. Still, overall for the design and build quality, this is even now a top of the line phone. Same is the case with the display. This is a great display for viewing contents, browsing through social media, gaming, etc. It's an immersive experience and the panel gets pretty bright for outdoor use and there was no issues at all. And here this dynamic island, it's functional, but then I won't say it's a mind-blowing thing, and the functionality didn't extend much after this long. But then this display paired with pretty good speakers make the 14 Pro Max a good media machine. Now since there is so much horsepower in here, the 14 Pro Max doesn't lag or stutter at all, even while doing intense usage like extensive camera usage or Photoshop photo editing or playing graphic heavy games. Because the A16 Bionic chip is still a great chipset and there was not much heating issues with this phone. And for sure, since it has a long-term horsepower window, the 14 Pro Max will surely be supported for maybe 5 more years with major software updates. And that's one of the strongest things to emphasize with the 14 Pro series. And here another such strong point for this phone is the camera system. Well, the 3 cameras at the back are pretty solid ones, in which the main 48 megapixel camera is the best. Now, I'm not telling that every shot you take with the main camera is straight out perfect, but the majority of the time you can straight away upload it to socials, but sometimes you might need to do some editing because the processing sometimes doesn't hit the mark. But overall, I love taking pictures with the 14 Pro Max, and even now, this camera system is a solid thing with the phone. Now the ultra-wide camera and the 3x telephoto doesn't work great in dull lighting conditions, but then if the scene is well lit up, they also do a pretty good job. And here the raw form photos hold so much details, which is a plus, and actually the best part of this camera system is not the photos captured, but instead it's the videos. This phone even now is one of the best video recorder. And actually the front camera is also great in that department, so if you're planning to do a bit of vlogging, you can do that with the front camera. And also the 12 megapixel selfies are pretty neat too. Now one thing to note here with the camera system is that the 14 Pro Max, at least as of now, can't record spatial videos which can be played in the Apple Vision Pro, which is not a big miss, but since the charging port is Lightning in the 14 Pro series, you can't use the SSD to record videos directly to the SSD, and also some of the software features are missing too. But overall, this camera system in the 14 Pro Max is still a very strong point for this phone. But with charging, well, it takes approximately 1 hour 30 minutes to fully charge it if you're doing wired charging with the lightning cable, and the phone does support 15 watt MagSafe charging if you're into it. And about the RAM, It's 6 GB, which is pretty sufficient for an iPhone, and hence RAM management was not at all a concern. And this phone is IP68 rated with 6-meter water resistance for 30 minutes, which is a big plus point. And about the Wi-Fi version, it's Wi-Fi 6 and the Bluetooth version is 5.3, and there is all the needed sensors, and the unlocking method is face unlock, which is the unlocking method in most of the iPhones. And if in case you're wondering about the 5G support, well, the US variant supports millimeter wave and sub-6 5G, and for the rest of the world variants, there is only sub-6 5G support. So from all this, one thing that should be clear is that the 14 Pro Max is still a true flagship phone. And nowadays, that's a common fact with phones. Even if your phone is a year or 2 year old, top of the line phone, it will still hold its mark with any phones launched recently. Because as of now, the bar format phones has reached a point where yearly updates are just refinements happening to an already good system. And that's why the iPhone 14 Pro Max still shines in 2024. And hence, if you're a 14 Pro Max user, you're good for more years. And if you're planning to get one for a pretty good deal, go for it. Now, the battery health drop is a weak thing. And when you get a refurbished iPhone 14 Pro Max or a 14 Pro, check that for sure. And if the battery health is anything about 90%, you shouldn't need to worry for a year. And maybe after a year or a couple of years, if the battery health gets worse, a battery swap from Apple will make things back to normal. And in the US, the battery changing price is around $135. And if you're doing it in India, it's gonna cost you around 9,800 Indian rupees. Well, that's all for this video, guys. Hope you liked it. If so, a like is much appreciated. And also, don't forget to subscribe to the channel because you won't miss our future contents. See you again in the next one. Till then, bye.